Well, joining me to delve into the details of the riveting case are former prosecutor Lonnie Coombs, Court TV reporter Benny Politan, and Joseph Scott Morgan, Distinguished Scholar of Applied Forensics at Jacksonville State University, and the host of Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan, a podcast that really delves into these things that we're talking about a lot. They have all been following every dramatic moment of the trial, up to and including a bomb threat. So this has got it all. Lonnie, let me start with you. As a prosecutor, I've been watching this and I've been shocked that they aren't going right at the murder charges and the evidence to support that. They seem to be talking about things that are off point. What do you think?
I agree with you 100%. As a prosecutor, I am actually watching this every day, gavel, gavel, and I am screaming at the TV so many times saying, you're getting lost in the weeds. You're going into all of these financial crimes. You're going into other things. You're not laying out the evidence about the murder, and you're giving all of this evidence, but you're not connecting the dots for the jury. And remember, this jury doesn't have notebooks. They can't be taking notes. Like, I'm taking notes, and then I'm making timelines and figuring it all out to see what all this evidence means. The prosecution has not been doing that. And I think that the defense is going to say, look, you heard a great financial crimes trial, but we're here to talk about a murder case. And where's the evidence of the murder case?
Yeah, they can assassinate his character, make him seem like he's not trustworthy, that he's manipulative, that he's been jerking clients around. But there's a big jump from that to going and shooting your wife and son to death out in a field. That's a big jump. And if even one juror is sitting there saying, they must be spending a lot of time talking about that because they don't have good proof about this, that alone can equal reasonable doubt.
Absolutely. And that's why the defense opening statement was so strong, because they just came out and they described how brutal and graphic this murder was. And they said, and they want you to think that this loving father and husband did that because he had some financial issues. That's a huge leap to make, and it's going to be hard for some jurors to make that without more evidence.
Are they trying this family, or are they trying this specific fact pattern, given the 100+ year history of this family there?
They're going after a man whose life has unraveled. This is a guy who is used to doing what he wants, controlling the situation through his power, influence, and his money. Right? His family for 100 years have been the local prosecutors controlling the criminal courts. His law firm is like the law firm to go to. You get hurt in a bus or car accident or a big accident, they're the ones controlling the civil courts. So when he's in a courtroom, he's used to being in charge. And the most fascinating thing here is that I've covered high-profile cases for more than 2 decades at Court TV. And always the defense is like, we need to change venue. Dr. Phil, we need to try this case somewhere else because these people know too much. This defendant, this accused double murderer, wants to be there. Yeah. He wants to be in front of his neighbors, his friends, people he's done business with, which to me speaks volumes about his level of confidence and the level of influence he believes he still has in that community.
Here is just released police body cam footage of the crime scene. And I want us to take a look at what Alex says and what he does. Now, when you look at this, just without getting into any of the science of body language or the psychology of trauma, just look at this with an eye towards what your mindset would be if your wife or husband and son, you had just discovered them shot to death. Look at this with that in mind of how distraught you would be or not. One thing we know, and I've spent a lot of my career focused on deception detection. One thing we know is innocent people in a traumatic situation of loss like this, they don't tell things in a chronological way. They don't start putting things together and tell a story. And you have to understand that there is a gunman on the loose, right? There's an active shooter in the area, and he's wanting to tell the police, well, my mother has dementia, my father is this, and I went to the house and got this, and there's supposedly there's no urgency. What about there's an active shooter, as far as he knows, standing behind a tree 30 feet away. That's a red flag, like a Navy flagman standing on the end of an aircraft carrier waving off somebody wanting to land. That's how obvious that is. I can just tell you, any professional that would be looking at that would say, this is not okay. When we look at this, first off, look at his face. This is a man who, there's something called, a cry face. Whenever you're really upset, all the blood rushes to your face, you become flush, your eyes get red, tears flow. Never a tear is shed. Not a tear is shed, not a single time. And that's why I say he has a Kleenex, but he never uses it. And then when he does have a cry face, it's like a baby that's crying and then notices mom's not looking. They'll stop instantly, and then they'll resume it again. Let's take a look.
My boy over there, I could see it was.
I see at this point, people behind him are reassuring him, so he's probably thinking, this is working. Now, this is someone that's just found their child with their head blown apart. I'm sorry, it just doesn't hang together. He's not telling, he's selling. And there's a difference between telling and selling. And at this point, he's selling. And at one point, he's asked about Maggie, and it's the first time in the entire interview he makes eye contact with the police officer to gauge how it's going. And that whole thing is troubling to me. In my opinion, this is a completely dishonest encounter with the police. Just my opinion.
Alex Murdaugh's story was, I was never at the kennels. That's the scene of the crime, the scene of the double murder. I was never there. I was watching TV and I took a nap, right? So that's part of his alibi. I was never there. This puts him there moments before the phone activity of the two victims goes silent forever. So one big, big lie.
Yeah, that's a problem. Have they patterned the voice? Have they brought in experts to pattern the voice and say that's him?
No, they've done better. Every time someone takes a stand, whether it's Paul's friends who called Alex their second father, or the workers in his law firm that worked with him every day, or the housekeeper, or his law firm partners, they had played the video every time for every witness, and they said, who are the voices? And they all said that third voice was Alex Murdaugh, 100%. And this is really the crux of the prosecution case, because you have him there within minutes of these victims being killed. And I don't think he knew that that video existed. I think that's why when the police came that night, he said, oh, I'm taking a nap, I'm up at the house, I didn't see them in the kennels until I went down and found him dead. He's telling his law firm partners, I was taking a nap. He's telling everybody, I was taking a nap during this time. He had no idea that that video had been taken, that was on Paul's phone, and that the police were gonna find it and have his voice on it.
I can't wait for the closing argument, right? Here's the closing argument. Ready? 3 people are at the kennels. 2 get shot, and 1 lies about being there. Why would he lie? Why would you lie about that?
Yeah, and he sure didn't. When he was in the front seat of that police car, he sure didn't express any urgency about, hey, there's a shooter around here somewhere. Why are you talking to me? Why are we not? Why are there not helicopters, floodlights? Why are we not looking for this shooter?
Let me tell you one more thing.
Is it because he knew where the shooter was, right here in this chair?
Yeah, exactly. And that goes to a broader point. A friend of mine had brought this up a few weeks ago. Out of all these cases that we cover across the country, why hasn't the defense come forward and said, we're going to find whoever did this? We're going to put all of our resources toward this and find who went out there and executed these 2 precious people that are part of our family and part of the community. I hadn't heard peep about that.
Now, they showed that, obviously, to show what a great, loving guy he was, but that actually opened the door, a really big door, right?
It really did. So the defense, they cross-examined and said, look, he's a loving family man. He loves his wife. He loves his children. He's just this wonderful guy. He would never do this. Well, the prosecution stepped up and said, if you're saying that he would never do this, what about all these things we know he was doing with these financial crimes, that he was stealing from his law firm, that he was stealing from his clients, that he was stealing from his friends? The jury should be able to hear that. And these witnesses, we should be able to ask him, well, if you knew these things, would you still think that he was this wonderful guy not capable of committing these murders? And the judge agreed with the prosecution. So all of a sudden, the door opened up, and now the prosecution was able to put on all of this evidence of the prior crimes that, well, he's been charged with at this point, all of the financial crimes of him stealing from his family and his clients and his law firm.
Big mistake?
Well, I think it's helpful to the prosecution. Huge mistake for the defense, yes. I think it's helpful to the prosecution, but I think it has to be done carefully. One, you cannot make this a financial crimes case. If there's more time spent on that than the murder case, it's going to make the murder case look weak. And two, here's my problem with the way they're using this as motive. They're saying his motive was to distract and delay the financial issues. I don't think anybody thinks you go out and brutally murder your wife and your child for distraction and delay. What they need to say is there was a financial benefit to him to kill these two people that was going to make the financial issues go away. If there's an insurance policy, we'd all go, oh, yes, there's motive, right? Because we hear about people killing people for an insurance policy because they're in financial straits all the time. Here, all you're hearing is, yes, he had all of these financial pressures, but we're not hearing how the killing of Maggie and Paul benefited him and made those things go away.
But it was different. And this is the trap, and the defense will do a great job putting the jury into this trap, which is try to think like he's thinking. And no one can think like someone who would commit murder thinks, especially the murder of your own family. It's like, that's a strange place, and hopefully none of the jurors have ever been in that place. But what they're trying to do is demonstrate that this is a guy, number one, who betrays everyone in his life. If you looked at the end of that video, there was a man who came around and hugged Alec from behind, his best friend. And his best friend testified for the prosecution and talked about how Alec was lying to him and using him to commit a fraud, which does a couple things. Number one, you're using your best friend in the world, you're lying to his face, and you're putting his livelihood, his reputation, his law license, his law practice all at risk because you want to commit this crime.
We're talking about the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh, and Lonnie said at the beginning of this that the jury is not able to take notes. So there's a lot of information coming at them every day. And you made the point that they're not putting the dots real close together here. They're talking about a lot of financial crimes. Let me tell you, juries problem solve things based on what they understand from their point of view. And as Vinny was saying, it's not within their realm of reasoning to say, I need a distraction, I'll kill my wife and child. As opposed to saying, I need a distraction, I can say I have cancer, I can come up with 1,000 reasons to gain some sympathy. I can check myself into rehab, I can have a psychotic break and go into a mental institution. I can do a whole lot of things that fall short of killing my own flesh and blood. That's a real stretch for a jury to wrap their head around. And when they sit down, they're going to reason this out from their own life experience, from their own rationale. And that's a hard sell that somebody would do that, particularly if they're respected and beloved in the community. And I think they're putting a steeper hill in front of themselves than they need to climb in order to prove that this person has done what he's done. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.